All right, we're back with another episode of Trades Talk. Maggie here, and our guest today is Steve Heroux, who is with the Sales Collective. So, Steve, longtime salesperson, decided really recognize that he did things a little bit differently than the average salesperson and was sick and tired of salespeople getting a bad rep. So he started the Sales Collective specifically to identify and help coach and mentor and really bring a positive light back to the sales world. Justin, what did you think of our very interesting conversation with Steve?
I met Steve about a month ago at a CEO group I'm a part of. He gave a presentation, and I thought his approach was very abrasive, which is exactly the approach you need to have for a sales contrarian thinker. Someone trying to challenge mindset and what is true that has been true for 100 years. And he's basically trying to say, no, that's not the way we should be doing it. So I think I wanted to get him on here just because he has a different point of view. And I feel like we have this constant idea of what sales are in our businesses. And Steve completely challenges probably 90% of what you think is true. So it was a fun episode for me. I enjoyed it.
He definitely challenged me multiple times. I mean, I don't get speechless very often, but there was definitely some situations where he challenged me and I was left pretty speechless. Like I look pretty dumb right now for the way I've been doing things. And it was very humbling and eye-opening to some ways I can change my sales org, the way I talk to my leadership, the way I format commissions and think about quotas and all of these different things. You really gave me a great fresh perspective on all of that. So I'm very grateful for my time and conversation with Steve. And if you don't got anything else to add, Justin, do you want to let the listeners hear what we've got to share?
Yeah, there's no reason to stall. Let's go ahead and hear from Steve. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of Trades Talk. We're here with Stephen Heroux, and we're going to be talking all about sales and maybe a lot about challenging what you know about sales today. So, Steve, welcome to the podcast
Thanks,
officially.
man. Thank
Tell
you.
us a little
Thank you,
bit about
Maggie.
yourself, your background, and why anyone should be listening to you.
Oh, pardon the setup. By the way, I'm sending Justin this MacGyver setup I have at my buddy's house. Just got to San Diego, and the only place I could have that was legit was here instead of doing this in the parking lot. So what we really tried to do, y'all, is just completely change the way that people look at sales, sales leaders, salespeople. Maggie knows because you're in tech sales and the order of society. If nobody knows this, right? It's dregs of society, lawyers, salespeople, right? Like we're only above lawyers, right? That didn't say much for us. So you think about the way that salespeople are viewed, it's worse today than it was even 10 years ago because there's so much garbage on social media, so many of these fake gurus, so snake oil salesmen, I won't mention their names, but you've got convicted felons who are now sales trainers that movies made popular. So it's just trying to help people understand that you can have integrity and you should tell people the truth and you don't have to sell everybody that comes within 3 square feet of you. One of the things one of my mentors taught me was just because somebody wants to buy something from you does not mean you should sell it to them. So those are the things that we try to work with our clients and helping people understand it. It's not life or death.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, can't get anything done efficiently or get a new tool or anything without a salesperson being involved at some point. Yet there's a stigma around salespeople that we're all out to be villains and take people's money and just, be sleazy and be in it for ourselves when in actuality, that's not the case. So I've deemed myself a relationship-based selling person. I will always be that. It's my inherent nature of selling. I love to get to know the people I work with and I sell to. Justin being an example, he was one of my sales. So perfect example right here on the line. So what's your take though on the different, sales methodologies, sales titles, whether it's your relationship seller to challenger, all those different sort
Yeah.
of coined terms in the industry?
And it's dog shit. It's the first reaction. I mean, it's just horrible. There's no, There is no magic selling system. I never understood this. I don't believe in any of those methodologies. This is the same stuff. People go, well, if they say this, then you say that. And you got to get them to say yes. You got to do those yes ladders, all this crap, right? From 1975. Like it doesn't work. And I think I might have taught Justin's group this, although I'm not sure. I'll actually ask Maggie because you've never heard this. Do you play golf, Maggie?
I do.
Okay. What's the holy grail for a weekend golfer to shoot? They want to break what score?
Par.
Okay. The bums on the weekend. What's the first big milestone? What do they want to shoot? Below what?
90.
Okay, that's good. I think that's good, right? It's usually 100. At least I
Yeah.
can break 100, right? Then 90, then 80. We're not all as good as Maggie.
It
apparently.
depends.
Then it's 80, then it's par, right? Do you know what the holy grail is on the PGA Tour to break what score?
No, I don't.
60.
Hmm.
So there have been 11 men to shoot 59 on the PGA Tour, 11 guys. One guy shot 58. Okay, 58. Do you know who that golfer is?
Probably not.
Who do most people think it is?
I would think Tiger Woods.
Everyone thinks it's Tiger.
Tiger.
Yeah.
Jack Tiger, right? Arnie. No, it was Jim Furyk. So if you don't know Jim Furyk, just Google Jim Furyk's golf swing. He's known for having a horrendous golf swing. David Faherty, who's a golf announcer on Live Now, said that Jim Furyk's golf swing is about as graceful as watching an octopus fall out of a tree. If you've never played golf, your swing is better. Jim Furyk's the only golfer to breathe air to shoot a 58 on the PGA Tour. Oh, and by the way, guess what he also shot? 59. How many guys swing like Jim Furyk? Take a wild guess.
None.
Correct. Why?
Because he does it his own way.
Yeah, but
And
why
he
doesn't-
does it the way he works for him.
Yeah, but why isn't that taught to everyone? He's the only guy in history. Why don't we just copy Jim Furyk?
It's a great question.
That's sales methodology. Leadership, magic, objection handling. Like, no. The way you help salespeople is you help them execute their swing, not Jim Furyk's swing. But what happens in sales, and you know these ride-alongs, right? Oh, you go shadow Jessica for the day. Oh, just do what Jessica did. No, you ain't Jessica. You can't do it that way. But this is how people are taught. It's insane. It would be like sending a golfer and say, hey, you just swing like Jim. There's not a chance on earth they could replicate that. So that's what I think about methodologies.
That's such
Well,
a great
like-
analogy.
Looking at the sales process and sales training and everything else in terms of how do you help the individual be better at what that individual is naturally good at? So my follow-up
Exactly.
question with this is like, if they don't swing and play golf, like how do we know what their swing is? How do we train them in the best way to get them to shoot a 59?
Hey, by the way, before I answer that, and the answer is sales DNA, but before I answer that, here's what most companies do. Hey, I know you never played golf before. I know you don't know how to swing, but by the way, go break par. What do you mean? Yeah, we're not going to train you or coach you or help you, but we did just hire you, and we're not going to give you onboarding or support or coaching, but yeah, go break par. That's what salespeople get told. So to go back to your question, the answer is sales DNA. You already know about this, considering we just used it. And if y'all don't know what sales DNA is, this is the assessment tool that we use. Many of you are familiar listening to DISC and Myers-Briggs and PI and Colby. There's about 2,000 assessments. Unfortunately, they're not built for sales. And just because you add for sales on the end of it doesn't make it for sales. Most assessments are personality based. There is no perfect personality in sales. And most assessments have about the predictive validity, right? Scientific accuracy of you shaking up a magic 8-ball or giving a tarot card reading. It actually costs you less money to use those. So no longer can we go, oh, she's a high D in DISC. She'll be great in sales. No, what are you talking about? This is what companies do. And they continue to identify the wrong traits in people. And so sales DNA is something that we've been using. It's been in use for almost 35 years. 2.5 million people have taken it, and it measures 21 specific core competencies that make up world-class salespeople. And the reason we use this one versus any other one, it's 92% predictive, which is crazy. But what that still tells me is we still get it wrong. So even with all the data, it just sometimes it doesn't add up. And go look at any sport in the history of sports and how many #1 draft picks are complete disasters. So sometimes you can have all the science you want, but it's where you put these draft picks. Do they go to a team with horrendous culture, terrible coaching, no support, no playbook? And gee, it's not a surprise why they didn't work out. But who gets blamed? The salesperson. No coaching, no onboarding, no specific training. Here, learn our magic system. Oh, and by the way, and hit these goals that aren't yours and that are really unrealistic. Yeah, hit those. And if you don't hit them, we're going to put you on a pit, which doesn't work, but it'll be better for HR if we do, because we're not going to help you because we don't really care as long as we meet the goals for EBITDA.
And I think Steve was just in my meeting right before this, so he's got it nailed down.
Yeah, the SaaS world is multiply all of that by 10x.
Steve and I met at a Vistage meeting, which is a CEO peer group that I'm part of. And Steve gives a great presentation on this methodology of, unteaching everything that's been taught, right? 99%. And so one of the things he said was, I believe, Steve, you said only 3% of salespeople actually like sales meetings.
Yeah.
And okay. And I immediately was like, oh, well, I mean, we're different, right? Like our culture, everything we do, we're more sales training and coaching than sales meetings. Like our team loves our sales meeting. I think like maybe 80% like it, 20% don't. Well, I was wrong, completely wrong. And I did not go to the next sales meeting, but everyone that attended your event did. And also our VP levels all did not go. And we intentionally did not go. And we said, look, all of our team, you guys it's a free for all. You guys have a conversation. What do you like? What do you don't like? And basically what I found out is they all kind of hated our weekly sales meeting.
Quite the juxtaposition. When you think they love them, they really hate them. That's a 180. What did they say?
They want to focus on coaching, training, bringing people in who can inspire, getting away from the hey, our sales goals are 600,000 this quarter for you, and you're at 200,000, and we have 3 weeks left. What do we need to do to close more sales, right? And we have a lot of special team players, I would say, people who have project management duties and sales duties, or design duties and sales duties, very typical in the trade industry. So they're trying to balance doing this technical work while also filling and closing their pipeline.
Yep.
And what we found out is we need to work and create a better playbook for how we take people through the process. We need to be on the same page with who our ideal client is. So we came up with this 13-week schedule for Q2 that we're going to put in place. Well, they came up with it and proposed it to us. And that's exactly what we're going to do. I just think so many people should do a similar exercise. Maybe you can share a little bit around sales meetings and why they're so ineffective or so not liked.
Let me get this straight. You asked your people what they thought and then listened?
A radical idea.
Wow.
That's why he's having the growth he has.
Well, I can't even believe that. What a unique idea. Your people felt heard? What? This can't work.
I also left the room. So like I said, our whole leadership team, it just so happened we were in a planning session. So it was perfect. So none of the leadership team members were in the sales meeting. And what I heard was all the people that are never really sharing or speaking up or talking, they were very vocal. And no matter how much of an open environment you try to create in your company, the stigma of your title is always going to keep you from hearing the true feedback you need to hear. So that was another part of it. I was not in the room, and I was able to get feedback afterwards from people who do feel comfortably sharing.
You were in that meeting with all those sales people. We had like 30 people in the room, 25, whatever. And all the salespeople were in the back, right? Leaders in the front. And then at the breaks, I can't tell you how many, but it was a lot. that came up to me and go, bro, thank you. Thank you for fighting for us. Could you please talk some sense into my CEO? I cannot tell you how many it was, not from your team. Your team was pretty excited, but several others. And so that's who I fight for. I will die on the hill, right, for my fellow salespeople. But that study that you mentioned, and everybody listening, that is a real study. HubSpot did it. So I didn't just make it up and walk around the office, right? That's a HubSpot study. 97% of salespeople would rather get a colonoscopy than go to their sales meeting. Okay. I mean, like, that's not real, but 3% find value. And what you mentioned, and I'm sure, Maggie, this has never, ever happened to you, is in sales meetings, right? They basically yell and berate, right, their salespeople for not hitting the goal that, isn't theirs.
Yes.
I'll ask Maggie this. She might not know this one. Maggie, do you have a neighbor on either side of where you live?
I do. I have both sides.
What's one of their first names?
Stacy.
Okay. After this podcast, I want you to go over to Stacy's, or after work tonight, go over to Stacy's, knock on the door, say, Stacy, I need 30 minutes of your time. And she's going to go, well, what for, Maggie? And you go, I want you to tell me all your goals and dreams for next year. I'm going to try to start hitting them. Why doesn't this make sense?
They're not my goals.
Oh, how interesting.
And they don't have any direct influence on me or my pocketbook
really?
or
How
my
funny.
success.
How funny. And what do you think a quota is?
It's even worse when it's a quota that no one translates on how they arrive to it. Meaning, okay, if you start with a number and you just put the number out there, because a company has to have a number that they have to hit, or that's just part of growth, right? But what I try to do is take a step back, take a step further, and back into that. So this is how you impact it and this is why it's important. But I've always said from day one of my company, I will promote people. I will move you ahead in your career on our values and our culture and who you are and what you provide to this team outside of your number before I will on your number. It's also the quickest way out the door.
It's funny. You just said something. If we go back 40 seconds and I said, is it? And you said, well, the company has to have a number. Based on what?
Based on their goals.
Where do they get those?
Depends on what type of company it is.
Okay. So this is part of this thinking, y'all, that people have had, and it's just in their brains. No, the company doesn't have to have a number. It's not real. Go to professional sports. Do you think the Chiefs, who won the Super Bowl this year, do you think the Chiefs started their year going, hey, everybody, we need 12.3 win? Did they do that? This is what companies do not understand. All they focused on, which is why Mahomes is the GOAT of our generation after Brady. Okay, Brady, Mahomes. Okay, don't give me shit. It's still Brady. But Mahomes is the next one. He doesn't go into a season with goals foisted on him by Andy Reid. They're not in a meeting going, hey, Pat, you threw for 4,150 yards last year. Hold on, let me add 8%. Be 4,327. And I'm going to rip you a new one every week. You don't throw for 316.67 yards. That would never happen ever in a million years. And these are people who make $50 million a year. They don't have quotas. But this is what companies don't.
But they also get fired pretty quickly if they don't win games.
Yeah, but that's not the fireable offense. You can't fire someone if you don't have a playbook, you don't practice the playbook, you didn't scout them, you didn't put them through a combine, they have no coaching, training, mentorship, they don't go to film session or role play. Well, you can fire them, but that ain't on them. This is what happens to every company, and they blame the salesperson. Like, it's crazy. But that's the stuff that has to change. And every single client we have that adopts these types of things and coaches people to what they need to do today, which Justin and I talked about, DPIs, not KPIs. It's an entirely different world. I don't know if I shared this, Justin, but we did a study with all of our clients. So the past 2 years, whatever, 200 and something clients. And we asked them, okay, number one, why did you hire the sales collective in the first place? But the second thing is, what did you actually get out of it? And it was mind blowing, just like you with your meetings, right? You thought one thing and it was the other.
Yep.
So I'll ask Maggie, well, you sort of know what we do, I guess, right? Sales consultancy, whatever, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Why do you think companies would hire us? What do they want to improve?
Their own, they want to hit their
Okay.
numbers.
So that's easy. That's what they thought they were hiring us for. When we talked to the salespeople and sales leaders, it was the polar opposite. So the second most common answer we got back was they made it fun to come to work again.
Yeah. I was going to say
Number one
hiring
answer,
on top
though?
of it, like teaching
Well,
sales leaders how to hire, because I think that's an
oh,
area, a lot of times salespeople get promoted to sales managers and sales roles. And I could go down a whole rabbit hole how salespeople do not make good sales managers.
oh, really? Have you
With-
read my book yet?
with an exception of a very few. However, they don't know how to hire. They know how to like entice a candidate and teach them and get them to buy into the company. But again, they don't know how to identify characteristics in that person if they're going to be a good salesperson or not.
And that's the whole reason we use sales DNA, because that's one of the uses of it for hiring, which is really important. Is if you get it wrong, it's 1.3 million. That's the average lost revenue for one bad hire. And companies get it wrong 74% of the time. So part of it's identifying the right skills and traits, which is why we use DNA. But the other part is if you have people doing interviews who have no idea how to interview, kind of problem there. Justin, I talked to a HR director Friday, and she's like, well, we'll make sure, stuff different. Anyway, I asked her if she was in SHRM. Do y'all know what SHRM is?
Yep. Society of Human Resource Managers.
So they have their own association and they do their own certification. And it's a SHRM study. And it was something like 80% of SHRM certified HR directors are not effective interviewers.
From
They
their
do it
own
for-
study.
Yes, they do it for a living. They got trained on it. They ain't good at it. What are the chances some random sales manager or VP of sales that was a salesperson is good at interviewing? They've not had training or coaching. They don't know about their biases. So that's why this is so costly, Maggie, with just guessing. And you've probably seen it in your role, but they write terrible job ads, right? So it's just a bunch of bullet points, right? Which appeals to nobody. So they pick from this pool of terrible candidates. And then they didn't decide how they were going to pick. So hiring managers fight over who they want. They go, well, let's go. I guess we'll go with Tim. I mean, he doesn't have any felonies. So I'm the guy.
He showed up early.
He came dressed nice on the Zoom. So yes, you're spot on there. It's a huge hindrance. And one of the things we decided to focus on, we decided to build a full service sales and sales leadership recruiting division late last year, and whirlwind of activity because people have been begging for help with this for so long.
Yeah. I mean, I had probably anywhere from 7 to 10 new people to my team every month. So I'm constantly hiring in my just my organization, part of the organization. I think take it one step further. I've never received formal interview training. I know some inherent characteristics of, what I'm looking for is because I focus on culture first and then skill second. I'm hiring a lot of people out of college, not a lot of experience. So I'm really just trying to determine, are they going to bring the team up and elevate and be a culture add, or are they going to distract people and be a culture deterrent? So I would take it a step further and say you need departmental and role-based interview training, because interviewing someone who works in tech, interviewing a salesperson in tech is very different than interviewing a programmer in tech. And a lot of times these companies have the same recruiting force going out there and scouting and doing phone screens and first round interviews for two completely different opposite personalities.
Well, it's even deeper than that. You have somebody that's good at tech sales that is not good at med device sales, that is not good at landscaping sales. But you can't see any of that with generic culture
Correct.
evaluations. So the reason sales DNA is so effective and 9 out of 10 is because every one of them is role specific. So like if we worked with Justin, he wants to hire a new sales rep, right, to sell landscaping or maintenance part of landscaping. We build the test for this ideal avatar for him to know if she or he would succeed in that role. And she may score really well in working in Justin's role, but may not score so well in working at Maggie's company. So having it be role specific with interview specific questions is really important. One more thing I'd add for the listeners, if you are doing interviews, you have to role play and you have to assign homework. Let's talk about homework first. Homework should come between the first and second interview, and it's something that's really easy. Hey, Maggie, can you just write me a 1-page summary on why you're devastated that Curb Your Enthusiasm is ending? I cried myself to sleep last night. But other than that, just assign something basic and you give them 48 hours to do it. Doesn't matter what it is. And you see how long it takes them to get that back to you. The second thing you do when you role play, usually between second and third or third and fourth interview, again, let them pick the topic. They certainly can't role play your product, service, or solution. They don't have enough knowledge. So have them role play with you on anything, but you have to see them in action. That's your chance. You wouldn't release a Hollywood movie with a $300 million budget without having people audition. That's not how the real world works. But apparently in $300 million companies, there's no role play. Well, they got a great resume. What does a resume have to do with anything? And this is what companies do. They still use resumes. Like what are we doing? We don't use beepers. Okay. I don't think anybody does, but or flip phones, maybe some people have those. There's a reason we don't use them because they're antiquated. But this is why companies are 1 out of 4.
Yeah, and I think that during the interview process, bringing in so many different personalities to be the interviewer, as well as giving them specific roles. I think there's the people on the interview panel to do that role playing with, while other people are looking for more communication skills or just general interpersonal skills. We always do a peer interview here just to make sure that they understand the role.
It's assigning some homework, just something that they show that they're honor commitments. They're fanatic about response time. They'll get this done. And let's be honest, we're not looking, if you give them 48 hours, we're not looking for someone to give it in 47 hours. You're looking for them to give it later that evening or the next morning would be ideal.
Yeah, if you get it close to the end, it's that tells you a lot. Unless they say, hey, Justin, my daughter's really sick. I can't get this to you by that. I want to talk to her. I don't even care if she does it. But that's the stuff you're looking for. What you're also looking for is excuses if people get it to you too late and they're not real legitimate reasons, a family issue, challenge, right? Travel issue, something like that. So you can learn a lot just from that content.
I think you're going to see in interviews, you're going to see the best person that day. I've never seen someone do really bad in an interview and then turn it around in their first few weeks at the job. It's always, they put the best face on. And then the second is role play. And I want to add something to that for service-based businesses. One of the things we do is we have some customers that we've had for decades. We have great relationships. And we ask them, hey, would you be open to coming into our interview process and doing a site walk on your property? And they go, sounds like fun. So they're into it, you know, and you know, if you're hiring an account manager that may take over that key account one day, how great if that person had a say in who that new account manager is. So we'll go do a site walk with a client, a real site walk, not a fake one. We're actually doing a site walk like we do every month. And we ask the interviewee to run the site walk and we give them some direction. And this is kind of, if they're coming in for an AM, they've got some experience in that area, so they understand what the assignment is. And then we debrief afterwards with the client and ask them, hey, if we hired this person and assigned them to your account next week, how, you know, thumbs up, thumbs sideways, thumbs down, would that be a good thing for you? And we get some honest feedback from our client because they're totally, you know, objective to this thing. They don't worry about anything else. They give you their feedback. So there's just a little piece of that we do.
In like the trades and stuff, you could do that, right? It's really hard to do that in a lot of other verticals because of just some it's not on site, right? So much of what we do is virtual. It'd be hard to do that. So you could do a version of that, everybody, like on I think it could be
Absolutely.
helpful. You could see how people react. I didn't teach you. You just made me think of this. I did a whole hour and a half on this for one of my other favorite business chairs last week, and wanted some tips on selling virtually. That's why I'm so pissed that I don't have my proper lighting and background. But I made the effort. But if you do have the ability to do that and you don't do that, that's on you. And one of the things I taught my team last week and this other Vistage group, I'm not a doctor, but I did create a medical condition, and it's called resting Zoom face. Do you know what that is?
I know it
Maggie.
too well.
Yeah.
I'm laughing because I manage a team that's half virtual, half in the office. And so when we do our team meetings every Wednesday, I have people in the room with me, and then I have people on this big screen, and I will like literally message them RBF, RBF. You're on this giant screen for everyone to see, and you just look angry.
Yeah, it's so crazy. Like it's 2024. Okay. It's 4 years after we should have been learning Zoom. Thankfully, right, I had learned it a little bit before the pandemic, but like we can see you. Like it's not a two-way it's not a two-way mirror. So I wish I could show you the graphic, but it's one's David Carr and one's the Undertaker. This is in my training. But like if you look like you just murdered a family of 5, like that's probably not good for sales. But still, people don't understand this. We had a guy, I told you, Justin, what we're building on the enablement platform, I think.
Right.
One of the VPs of sales for this huge enablement platform, everybody knows, the dude is eating a burger on the, what are you doing? You can do this. You can do this. Like, we won't see you. It's unreal. And millions of dollars blown, like all the time. I had a tech one, Maggie, a guy in tech, a VP of sales, stood up. He was sitting, stood up so you could see him walking around. Then he comes back and he starts drinking something. What do you think the worst thing you could drink on a Zoom? Let's see if you can guess. Not coffee. What do you think?
Well, alcohol or a protein
No.
shake of some sort.
Way worse. No, way worse. Scope.
Oh my gosh.
Poured scope into his mouth and gargled on the Zoom.
I got one for you. What do we do implementation here? Well, our implementation team is amazing. And we actually had someone who was a leader at a landscape company, and they didn't use Zoom a lot. It was right when we kind of started going all Zoom, all virtual. And they were doing their kickoff call, and this guy brought his phone or his computer to the bathroom and didn't realize, and he was sat down and didn't realize that his camera. I mean, I've never seen a CEO's face go so white on a call before.
Worse than the old Naked Gun Frank Drebin moment, but still just as bad. I mean, Oh my God. Maggie, what is it you sell again?
We sell business management software to the trades, the landscapers, commercial cleaners, a pest control company. So Justin, actually, he gave into my sales ways about 4 years ago. I also convinced him to do this podcast with me. So let's just say I'm really good at selling Justin.
Her methodology works. And I think it's one of the things that I've seen done way too often is we talk people out of our service or product when they were ready to buy when they jumped on the call. And instead of just like saying, trying to go through that process, we're continuously telling them all the benefits and features and all this cool stuff. And it's like, they're like, okay, I think I'm actually exhausted now. I need a break. And then I'm going to think about this and get back to you tomorrow. When they were like, they're ready to just hand you the credit card within 5 minutes.
That's all. We didn't talk too detail about your, person, but that's all the stuff that's in sales DNA, right? So the need to be liked. And then there's something else called supportive buy cycle, this thing we measure, which made me think of it. By default, we sell to prospects the way we buy stuff. Okay. So if we're a deliberate buyer and we need all the information, we assume that they do as well. So even when they say, here's my credit card, you go, hold on, let's think about this. Put your credit card away. Let me give you some more information first. No, but they don't understand that they're doing it, right? But that's the power of sales DNA. Like you've, or Maggie, maybe it doesn't apply to as much as us on Zoom, but maybe Justin, you, and it was here in person. Have you ever met somebody with bad breath?
Oh yeah.
Do they know they have it?
Not at all. No awareness.
So nobody will tell them. So they go years. Okay. In sales, if you have bad breath, that's really bad. But the breath that's even worse in sales is commission breath. Okay.
Mhm.
And many salespeople have it. But the problem is they don't even know they have it. The way they talk, the way they text, the way they Zoom, the way they interact on LinkedIn, it is so salesy. They're just spewing commission breath on people and they can't seem to figure out why people aren't buying. But if you don't know these things, how would you fix it? Right. That's why, I mean, I'm so fortunate I found sales DNA because I had a lot of success in the past. You already know about this. We don't have to go into it. But if people had taught me what we teach today, I'd be on another planet. But I didn't know all this stuff.
Yeah.
See, was that part of this, reason and determination you had for starting Sales Collective?
Yeah.
When,
Yeah.
coming out of the very corporate commission driven sales plan, like maybe just talk us a little bit about, why'd you start Sales Collective? What is Sales Collective? Because it kind of
Yeah.
sounds like just, I don't know. It sounds
Yeah.
different than what most sales organizations I hear. So tell us a little bit about Sales Collective.
Yeah. The inspiration behind it, you probably know some of this. Actually, I didn't get into it too much. I'm from Boston. If y'all have ever seen Seinfeld, you know the Costanzas, okay, George's parents. Those are my parents. Okay, so that's who I had to grow up, right? Why I'm the way I am. I didn't speak, the first 17 years of my life, right? I mean, nothing, like deaf mute. Head down in homeroom, no dates, no dances, no proms, nothing. I was only good at sports. That's it. I went to college and got into a really expensive business school somehow. And I didn't want to bankrupt my parents. My dad drove 2 trucks for a living, right? 18 hours a day. That's why I worked my butt off. My mom was an administrative assistant at a bank. So we had no money. And now I had a $70,000 tuition to help them pay for. So I answered a job ad. You know what it is, Maggie. I'll let you guess. Do you know what it is? My first sales job?
You were selling
What's this
cutlery
job?
at Sam's
Yeah,
Club.
Cutco knives. No, not at Sam's. Although I did see a guy in Costco a couple weeks ago selling Cutco in there now. But I actually had to go and find these customers. They didn't just walk up to my table. So I sold Cutco knives. And freshman year, I'm deathly afraid of other humans. And by senior year, I was #1 in the country. So then they said, hey, Steve, you're good at sales. Want to be a sales manager? Okay, like we talked about before. There's a reason airlines don't make the flight attendant the pilot the following summer. But, it's what I did and failed and still struggling to be a sales leader. But went from there to Aflac, which y'all know the duck on TV. Many of you probably have it. Companies spent 13 years with Aflac and somehow made it to #1 there too. So when I was finished with my Aflac career because of corporate America crap, had a friend of mine at Aflac who said, Steve, I did a big talk for him in New Hampshire. And he's like, man, your content is the polar opposite of every sales trainer I've ever seen. Goes, you should take this test. And that was the sales DNA test. And I actually didn't take it for 6 months. I kept saying, I don't want to take it. All these personality tests or whatever. He goes, if you don't take this, I'm never talking to you again. And I've known Mike for 16 years and he was serious. And I took it and I was living in Costa Rica at the time. I had moved there because I could do all my Aflac training, coaching and all this stuff. I had built a training course for Aflac agents so I could do it for many. I took the test, didn't do so well on it. And I got my results back and I'm like, man, you suck at sales. How did you sell that many knives and that many, families you helped? How'd you do it? But nobody taught me any of the stuff on the test. They didn't talk to me about the need to be liked, which I had, which is a major hindrance. I didn't know about being uncomfortable discussing money, which I was. That was a major hindrance. So the next day I shut down. I had built a company again to teach Aflac agents what I did. I shut that down and started Sales Collective the next day. And I said, man, if we could just show people, these hindrances, and then I built training specific to fix each hindrance. That's what we do, right? We don't do a generic magic selling system from the 60s, right? It's find out what people need help with, build training to help them fix that specific thing. And that's how it all started.
I think it's really powerful that you've built this kind of out of your own failures or your own discovery throughout the way. You have mentioned a couple times though, and you're talking about these specific things that you were weak in and you find people weak in. You've mentioned a couple times about the ideal avatar that you built. So in my mind, that goes down this idea of sales methodology and ideal candidate. So how is it different building an ideal avatar and identifying characteristics that are missing versus setting someone up for an ideal sales methodology, going back to your golf analogy?
A sales methodology is just a bunch of words that somebody memorizes. That has nothing to do with the person. So the totally separate things. More importantly, when we look for people that fit a certain avatar, there really are three categories, and Justin knows a little bit. The third category, which is least important, are the tactical skills. They're still important. Hunting, reaching decision makers, qualifying, presentation style, all those things, right? There are 10 things we measure. That stuff you can train. So it's okay if people don't have really high level skills, because most salespeople have never been trained. Negotiation text, all those kind of things. The second category is called sales DNA competencies. These are the things that live in our brains, the way we think, the way we act, the way we behave. And these are the categories of uncomfortable with money. They need to be liked. They sell the way they buy. They cannot recover from rejection quickly. Those things are really important. But the most important thing is something called the will to sell. And this is something, again, 34 years of data, which is crazy. If people do not possess a certain amount of the will to sell, there is a 0.0 chance they become a top performer. So we have to identify that before companies risk 100, 200, 500 grand on a guess. And so part of this ideal avatar is the will to sell. And one of them is desire. Does this person have the desire to become a world-class sales professional? If you don't have that, you ain't lucking into it. Like Justin said before, you don't start off a D and then move to an A. That just doesn't happen. Commitment's another one. We talked about this, Justin. There are things that salespeople don't like to do. And if I asked you for the list, Maggie, on your team, it's pretty long. But many of them, it's prospecting, cold calling, CRM, reporting, role playing.
CRM,
If you're
CRM, CRM,
okay.
CRM.
Yep,
No,
yep.
there you go. No, wait, that's the number three. Number three. So if you're a salesperson, you don't like to prospect, you don't like to track anything, you have no idea what's going on in your pipeline, what are the chances of you being successful? And we can tell you in 5 seconds. But to go back to what one of you said before, Justin, about the interviews, like, what do you think a salesperson who's interviewing will tell you about those things? I
don't
love
mind
them. I
CRMs.
love the phone.
I love
Give me a
cold calling.
phone. Get out of my way. Okay, you're getting catfished. All of you listening to this, you get catfished in interviews. And if you do online dating, you know what I mean. You show up at the bar, it ain't them. Okay, this is what happens in interviews. And so if you don't see these things before you hire them, it's a huge issue. The last one I'll mention is responsibility, because Justin and I talked about this too. If a salesperson doesn't have success, who do they blame? So the bottom 90% of salespeople, who do you think they blame, Maggie, if they don't have success?
Oh, bottom 90%.
Who do they blame?
Their manager,
Who else?
the client, or the prospect.
Who else?
I'm
The
striking on.
president, their dog.
Oh yeah, everyone besides
Walker.
themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
The top 10% of women and men, they blame themselves, even if it isn't their fault.
Mhm.
All of these things you cannot see in an interview or on a resume. So that's why the will to sell is the most important when you're looking for this avatar, not necessarily the specific sales skills. But in reality, companies do the reverse.
Yeah.
And they go, oh, well,
Mhm.
he's got all this industry experience. No, no, no. It's not features and benefits.
I'm going to pride myself here a little bit. I'm actually the complete opposite. So I must be doing something right because I tell my recruiter, and she's floored by this. I tell her, I want people who don't have sales experience, especially in the role that I hire for. I hire into an SDR cold calling outbound
Yeah.
role. And I said, I want people with no sales experience because I want to figure out who they are as a person. I would rather take someone who's never picked up the phone and cold called versus someone who's done it in a really poor setting and done it and failed and gone through 4 different SDR roles and is job to job to job. Like I want the person who's fresh out of college and is like, I got kicked out of my parents' house. I have a car payment to make. I have all of these things, not someone who's going to depend on just, collecting that base salary.
That's the will to sell, right? That's a
Mhm.
huge part of it. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people listening are thinking in their head, this is great stuff. I love it. But at the end of the day, I'm so busy running jobs. I'm so busy running the business. I don't have time to necessarily train, onboard, do all this. And also, I need to train myself before I can train other people. For Steve, for people who are just in the moment, busy, they're growing their company, they're struggling, and they want to invest in their salespeople. They want to, maybe they don't even have a sales team. They're trying to build this idea of what a sales team is. You
Yeah.
know, is there a path there for them at Sales Collective? Is that something you guys offer, is to help the business owner operator, 10 going on 50 employees who
Yeah.
wants to build a sales team? I mean, what do you tell those guys?
Yes, because there's a few different ways that we can help depending on where they're at, right, in the life cycle of their company. The first piece of advice we would give to everybody, if we could go back and tell all the clients we have, hey, let's start over. Kind of like if you've ever seen the redraft, right? In sports, they go, oh, who would you draft first now that you know how good they are? Well, we would go back and have them build their sales process first. It is the single most important thing in a company. And 14% of companies, 14% have a documented sales process that their salespeople follow. They practice, they learn, they're taught how to execute. It's findable, right? It's not on some shelf somewhere. 14% have that. And so what happens is they just think, oh, we just need to add a salesperson, or we just need 2 or 3 more. No, if you add more players to the team and there is no playbook to follow, you're just creating more chaos. And this is what companies do. They just get players and go, hey, there's the field. What do you mean? Yeah, just go score some touchdowns or something. Yeah, no, get open. I'll find you.
Well, is it touchdowns? Is it goals? Is it
Nobody
runs? I mean, we're
knows.
not even speaking the same language,
I
you
know
know?
this is crazy, man. This is what they do. So I would build a sales process first.
Okay.
And what's interesting is you have companies who will light 50 grand, 80 grand, 100 grand, 150. They'd light that on fire every bad hire. And
I don't think we realize how bad
it's
that is.
crazy. And
Yeah.
they still don't have a sales process and wonder why it's not working. And the sales process is less than any employee a company would ever hire. And you build it once. It's nuts, man. But that's what I would go back and share, because people call us and they go, hey, I heard you do sales training. No, go call somebody else. We don't train people on magic systems. We don't even know your process. What are we going to train them on? Got to build, here's how to build rapport. Got to pour it at the wall. You find something on their wall. Boy, that's a guitar. I love guitar. You like music? There's like all this crap, right? You have to have something to teach people how to execute. And Maggie mentioned the recruiting thing. This is such a huge part of recruiting. And we talked about this, Justin, in my our time together, if you build it, they will come. If you're trying to recruit top talent and you're interviewing them and they say, what's the plan? What does onboarding look like for me? How are you going to help me grow? And then you go, plan? We don't have a plan. I mean, we have a out of reach goal for you for something you've never sold. We have that. What makes you think someone's going to want to work at that company? So when you have a documented sales process laid out with training, coaching, development over the next 60, 120, 180, 365 days, most candidates who are looking will go, I've never seen that before, because they get 3 days of onboarding. That is what the average sales rep gets in this country. 3 days yelled at when they don't perform.
Yeah. Go ahead, Maggie.
I was going to say, 3 days at the beginning, great. Let them do a little bit, revisit on the 6th day. Let them do a little bit, revisit. You got to constantly be revisiting them for months and months and months. But I wanted to get your take on all this. So you said the quota, the number given by the company, the quota it means nothing to the frontline salesperson. And I see where you're going with this. How do you set effective quotas then?
I don't.
Okay, so when you hire someone or you're setting an on-target earning salary or you're setting commission, where do you get your benchmark for understanding if that person is doing what they should be doing or not doing what they should?
Justin, you and I talked about this, and what generally the biggest takeaway from our time together when we do Vistage Talks is DPIs versus KPIs. So to go back to make this easy for everybody listening, Maggie, where do you live?
I live in St. Louis, Missouri, like the suburbs of St. Louis, Missouri.
Okay, so are you a Cardinals fan?
I am not. I was born in Chicago, so I'm actually a
Cubs fan. Okay.
A Cubby.
All right. Well, we'll use this though, because one of my new friends is a coach or helped coach the catchers for the Cubs this spring training.
It built my resilience. That's all I'm going to say.
Okay.
I became a resilient person being a Cubs fan.
Wow, Cubs fan in St. Louis. So we'll use baseball. What's the KPI in a baseball game? How do you win a baseball game?
Score more runs.
Okay.
Get around the bases.
So coaches in Major League Baseball, they just tell their team, we need 6.2 runs today.
Yeah, no.
How do you get the runs?
Through a team effort of, RBIs and hits and all these different things. Yeah.
Okay. So you got to get people on base. How do you get people on base? This is what needs to be taught. Okay. And it's called quality at bats. And that's the only thing that sales leaders should be working on with their salespeople. That is it. Executing quality at bats, quality phone call, quality demo, quality follow-up, quality contract sent out, quality RFP delivered, whatever it is. Y'all have them. Everybody's different in what they do. If you execute quality at bats time after time after time, and you coach people to execute and improve and fix the challenge they've had because you watch them, you review their Zooms, you go with them on site. What do you think that leads to? More people on base. Therefore, we score more runs. So everything should be about DPI, right? Daily performance indicators. What are the things that I can do today? But that's not taught ever. And I shared this with this guy, Ryan, my new buddy who wants to be a speaker, played 15 years in the majors, 15 years. And I taught him this. He's like, what's one of the things you teach? And I told him DPIs. He goes, dude, that's everything it's everything we're coached in the major leagues. I'm like, oh, what do you, so people that make 40 million a year playing baseball, they don't talk about the runs. No, they don't. They call them quabs. So the stat they measure is called quabs. How many quality at bats did you have today? That's it. Not how many RBIs did you have? Not how many hits did you have? Did you execute at bats? Did you swing at good pitches? Did you lay off bad pitches?
Well, you're getting to my question. Who defines quality?
The team. So you would have to know what a quality at bat is. So if we're doing a demo, maybe it's a software demo, I don't know, but whatever it is, Is it with the right decision makers? Did you execute it in 45 minutes or less? Did you get another time set up?
So that
the
is where the
team-
managers can come in and set some sort of
Yes.
standards, but be not a quota or a goal, but it could be a standard of here is what we are looking for ideal client profile.
Is it with the ICP?
Yeah.
Or is it with the janitor? Like,
Yeah.
who cares if I did a great demo, but it's not with the decision maker? Does that count as a
Mhm.
quality at bat? So y'all work on it together. And this is, Justin, to go back to your sales meeting thing. What an epiphany of talking to my team and getting their input and then having them contribute. And that's why we get so much adoption, y'all, when we help companies build sales processes, because we ask the people. We don't come in and go, here's our magic way of selling. We get in deep with them. What do you like to do, Maggie? What do you like to do, Justin? Well, I send a thank you note the day after every time. Cool. Well, I send a box of Cravery cookies, or I do. So you have to get contribution from your team, and then you agree on what it looks like. And that's the sales manager's job. You are a coach. You're
Mhm.
not a boss. You're not a dictator.
Yep.
You're not a gatekeeper. You're a coach and a
Correct.
supporter. But that's not how most of them operate, because
It is
learned.
really not. And I feel I actually see myself more as like a culture cultivator. Like my job is to cultivate this environment where you want to work hard, you want to
Yeah.
be successful, you have opportunities to be successful, and
Yeah.
you're excited about coming to work. Like not every day is going to be beautiful, butterflies and rainbows. I want to tell you, I'm going to brag on one of my salespeople here for a minute because I think you'll like this story. Salespeople always love to tell stories, but I have this one guy, young guy on my team. We call him the donut master because his thing is donuts. Like he brings donuts to people he's trying to get meetings with, and it has worked every single time he's done it. Well, he's had this one prospect that he's been trying to get to take a meeting for years. Like has called the guy like 80 times. The guy always gives him time of day, but hasn't taken a meeting. And his family just so happened to be on vacation in the town where this prospect lived. And he sent his little brother with donuts to this guy's shop and he got the meeting. So
Nice.
like that's the ideal we were talking about, like the characteristics or the will to sell. That's what it is. The inherent, like I'm gonna figure this out anyway, and I'm gonna make myself look different. So I always want to brag on that story a little bit because I thought it's just such a cool, it's one of those things that's giving sales a good name, right? Whereas there's some examples out there where it gives sales a bad name.
I thought you were going to go someplace else, because the first thing that came into my mind was I would think of like sending over like a half of a donut or like a munchkin or something and go, hey, if you want the rest of these, I'll be in there next week. So that was for my first thought on that. But those are the things that separate, people from everybody else. But that's will, right? That's not skill.
Yeah.
Those are the things that have probably helped him or her,
I think there's a lot of people, and maybe I'm one of them, thinking around this idea of not setting quotas, not setting goals, and like how irresponsible of a company to not have that. But we had a guest on super early in the podcast. It was like our second or third guest. It was Cam and David from Par 3 Landscaping. And so they're in Vegas, and they're the big, kind of market leader in Vegas. Great family company, great culture, just everything you'd aspire to be a, $50 million landscape company. And we start talking about budgets, like financial budget of like what revenue. And they go, what do you mean a budget? Like we don't set a budget. We just wake up every day and work hard and do what we need to do. And the results come. And they have this method of just, it's very similar to what you're describing. Like they don't necessarily go out and set all these quarterly goals and set these annual goals. And they have intentionality. They have great direction and leadership and clarity of what is expected, but they focus so much more on behaviors and quality behaviors. And it's obviously working out great for them. As we were talking through the podcast with them, I was just so blown away that a company can find that type of success without this traditional methodology of continuous goal setting. So I just want to back that in because I think a lot of people are probably like, well, it's easy for Steve to say as a consultant, don't set goals, don't set quotas, but there's a real life example of a company who's crushing it and
Tons of
has that mindset.
Yep, we have another one. We worked with them for a little bit. They're in the food distribution industry, and they'll do, I don't know, 200 and something million this year. Their average length tenure for a sales rep is like 11 years or 13 years or something. They've been in business 15 years, and they grow year after year after year after year after year. No quotas. Oh, and by the way, their sales reps, not a dime in commission, not a penny, not a dime. And all they do is they focus on, caring about their people. So they pay really good base salaries and they do random bonuses. So I don't think I told this one. There's this guy, we just call him Scott, and he told me they took me fishing. So I did a keynote for them and I built into the contract, you have to take me fishing or I'm not doing it. So they took me fishing. So on the boat, he was telling me, he goes, man, I love this company. I'm like, why? And he holds up his wrist, goes, this. I'm like, what is that? He goes, it's my favorite thing in the world. He's Rolex, right? And he said, oh, they gave it to you for some award or something? And he goes, no, just because. I'm like, what? So he told me the story just randomly, right? He had shipped, a ton of Jenny O chicken, whatever. And they wanted to reward him for being a great employee and a great salesperson and so on. So they found out that his favorite thing, like they would never buy for himself, was a Rolex. He would never spend 10 grand on a watch, and he could spend it, but he never would. So how did they know that he wanted this Rolex? How'd they find out?
They asked him or his
Nope.
wife?
Yes. The fact that they actually know his wife and his wife knows them, like this is a whole nother issue. Most companies couldn't tell you if their salespeople are even married or in a relationship or if they have kids or whatever. So they asked his wife, what's the one thing Scott would never buy for himself? And that's what she told him. And Rolex showed up one day and he's never going to leave. But this is the stuff that's like normal CEOs don't understand. That's why their quotas are only there because some moron came up with it 100 years ago. It's the same thing as resume. Hey, let me just write a bunch of bullshit on here and then convince people that that's me and then they'll hire me. Yeah, that's resumes. You can't use them anymore. It's just a lie. But we've been taught this stuff for 100 years. So people can't even grasp the concept. But if y'all want to read more into this, read Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. It's not even really his stuff. And you'll understand what we mean. Like, unless you plan on going out of business next quarter, what the hell are you coming up with some magic number for? What is the money no good after the first quarter? The money doesn't count. The currency's gone.
It's fun to question what has become known as best business practices, right? And I think a lot of best business practices came out of the 80s from guys like Jack Welch and some of these others who I think we've grown up a little bit. Like, technology is advanced, has our way of thinking advanced. I hope so. But so many of those individuals who were trained in the late 90s or even the late 80s are managers of today. And so why would they assume things have radically changed? But they have. And I think the sooner we're able to question the everyday way of thinking, and that goes back to why we created our purpose at K&D is to raise the bar in the landscape industry. Because the purpose of raising the bar is to question everything we know and then reinvent it in hopefully a better way. But I'm going to be honest, we make so many mistakes in that fashion because we're forced to change, and sometimes just for change's sake. And then you realize, oh, actually, that way we were doing it was working. But more often than not, we find out, no, the new way is better than the old way, but there's always an improvement we can make. So it's been a fun conversation, just questioning we probably hurt some egos out there, but
it's fine with me. Let's hurt them all.
I've definitely questioned myself here a little bit on this podcast. I thought I knew a lot more about salespeople than I did. And I love to get fresh perspective and be told to shut up sometimes.
Wait till the book comes out. I just got my first cover design back.
Nice. So, congratulations on that. Just don't tell my husband that I like to be wrong. He doesn't know that yet. He hasn't figured that out.
All right. We'll keep that. Silent.
Well, Steve, I want to get something. We wrap every episode up with a trade secret. This is experience, something you've gone through, something you've learned. You've shared so much with us already, but what is one last note you want to leave our listeners with?
I'll give you a Maslow quote. Y'all know Maslow, hierarchy of needs. I'll give you the one that 97% of CEOs cannot grasp this concept, and 100% of private equity cannot grasp this concept. You ready? The only way to truly be happy is to be free from any outcome.
That's a good one. All right, Steve, how
Thanks,
can people
y'all.
get a hold of you?
LinkedIn's probably easiest. We're on there a lot. Do our best to post as much relevant, hopefully enjoyable, marginally funny content as we can. So Steve Heroux, Heroux, or you could follow the Sales Collective, but mostly active on my page. So that's probably the easiest way.
Awesome. Give him a follow, folks. And if you don't recall his last name, how to spell it, you can just find him at the Sales Collective. That will stick in your head. But Steve, so great having you on today. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, Maggie. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Thank you, Steve.